You're listening to Unhooked, the Breaking Porn Addiction podcast. On today's episode, the path to liberation, embracing wholeness and achieving complete freedom. So, stay tuned.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Hi, I'm Jeremy Lipkowitz, and with over 12 years of meditation experience as a mindfulness trainer and coach for high performers, I've become obsessed with helping people break free from compulsive, unhealthy behaviors and addictions and step into a life of true freedom so that they can finally become their best selves and cultivate deeper and lasting fulfillment. I've created Unhooked, the Breaking Porn Addiction podcast to give you simple, actionable, step-by-step strategies to master your mind and optimize your life. This is Unhooked. So hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, Jeremy Lipkowitz, and we are back with another Monday episode. This time, part 5, the final part in the series of The Way of Integrity, going through the book by Martha Beck. Before we dive into today's content, just a public service announcement. We are looking for 5 more men to join us in the Unhooked Academy group coaching program this month. So if you are looking for support in breaking free from your addiction, if you are finally ready to put this addiction in the past and break free from the inside at the root core of your addiction, then this is the group for you. So if you're interested, go to unhookedacademy.com and apply for a free discovery call. Like I said, we're looking for 5 more men to join us in the group coaching program this month. So without further ado, on to today's program. So I want to start with a quote that I recently saw on social media. And this comes from young Pueblo's work. It comes from his book, The Way Forward. And the quote goes like this. He says, "You need to do more than eat nourishing food, exercise, and rest to feel your best. You also need to be around good people, spend time healing your emotional history, live in alignment with your values, say no to people pleasing, stay open to growth, and deeply embrace change." Now, I saw this quote as I was preparing for recording this podcast episode, and it struck me how relevant it is to the topic today, which is that we need to do more than just the basics when it comes to feeling our best and living our best life. There's all these other things that we need to do in our life, like being around good people, healing your emotional history, living in alignment with your values, to achieve that state of inner freedom, to achieve the final goal, whether you call it liberation or enlightenment or awakening or living with integrity, whatever you want to call it, that peak of the mountain experience requires more of us. And so that's really what this episode today is all about. This, again, is part 5 in the series of The Way of Integrity, going through the book by Martha Beck. So if you have not listened to the other episodes in the series, please go back and start with the first episode. So a high-level overview of what to expect in this episode today. We're going to be finishing the journey of Dante. So as he climbs through the mountain of Purgatory and into paradise, the Garden of Eden. I'll also share a few reminders and motivations for you in this journey, things to get you pumped up and give you some more energy in this journey. And then finally, I'll be sharing a simple list of what we might call the 10 basic integrity practices. In some ways, this is a recap of the journey that we've been on so far, but it's 10 things that you can do, 10 building blocks of living your life with integrity. So make sure you stay to the end of this episode for that list. So as a reminder of what has happened in the journey so far, we are following the journey of Dante, and he starts his journey by waking up in the dark wood of error. He finds himself in this dark, foggy, wooded area. He realized he's lost his way in life, that he is not on the path. He knows that he has gotten out of integrity, that he is not living in alignment with the life he knows he should be living. And so in his quest to break free from this dark wood of error, he ends up meeting the dead poet Virgil, which is a symbol for meeting the teacher or seeing another way of living, having some other perspective of how to live your life. Virgil then leads him into the Inferno, and this is a metaphor for deepening your awareness and understanding the ways that you've caused harm or gotten out of integrity. And in this, one of the deepest lessons here is, again, this idea that the only way out is through. That if we want out of our suffering, if we want to reach that state of inner peace or freedom or reaching our full potential, we have to go through discomfort. We have to go into the places that scare us the most. And this is what is used with this metaphor of going into the Inferno. So Dante and Virgil go into the Inferno. They move down the different layers or levels of hell and finally get to the bottom level, where it is a cold, icy lake with Lucifer in the center of it. And they go through the center of the Inferno and out onto the other side, where they finally reach the base camp of Purgatory, the bottom of the mountain, and start to climb up it. And in the last episode, we talked about the first step on that journey and how it is committing to honesty, committing to telling the truth, to not lying to yourself or to others. And it is here now where we find ourselves beginning to climb up the mountain. So a big step on the path of healing is what Martha Beck calls mourning the known misery. Mourning as in grieving the known misery. And she says this in the book. She says, everyone who decides to embrace integrity must mourn the known misery, the familiar patterns and dysfunctional relationships they've left behind. I promise, if you give your grief space and time, it will eventually bring you to a level of joy you may never have imagined. So the idea here is that as you step into a new life, there will be sadness. Even if you're stepping in a positive direction, even if you're making healthier changes and doing things that are supportive and uplifting, there will be a grieving process that you go through. Part of you will miss your old ways. Part of you will miss your old life, the way you used to numb out or distract or indulge in sense pleasure. Many of my clients talk about how sometimes they just have this longing to go back to the way it was when they would be binging on porn and junk food. And, they know that it's not a life that they want to live, and they know that it's not supportive for them living a happier, healthier, fulfilling life. But there is that sense of grief, of missing that old way of life. In some ways, it's like a comfort blanket, an old friend that has been with us for a long time. Even if you need to break up with a friend, the breakup process is difficult. Even if hey, I need to get this person out of my life, it's toxic, it's holding me back. To actually go through that process, you will go through some grieving. So just know that saying goodbye is never easy, even when it's the right thing to do. And so this is what Martha Beck means when she says we must mourn the known misery, the familiar patterns, the dysfunctional relationships that you've left behind. But then she promises, she says, if you give your grief space and time, if you allow that grieving process to take place, it will eventually bring you to a level of joy you may never have imagined. And this is a quote also that I've shared before. This comes from Brianna Wiest. She says this, she says, when you're growing, you will also feel like you're dying. That is because a part of you is. Nobody talks about this, but you have to grieve the loss of who you were before you can fully step into who you're going to be. So part of this process is feeling like you're dying, and it's because there is a part of you that is dying. You have to allow that process to take place if you're going to step into the next chapter in your life. So this is the next step in our journeys, to make room to grieve, to let go of that old way of life, and to understand that it will be painful, but it doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong. So moving along in the journey, climbing further up the mountain slopes, Dante and Virgil, they reach a gate. And these are actually the gates of Purgatory. It turns out that Dante hadn't yet reached the gates of Purgatory when he came through. He had just started his journey up the mountain, but hadn't actually gotten into Purgatory, what some scholars call this anti-Purgatory, just meaning before Purgatory. And this gate of Purgatory is guarded by an angel. And on the gates, there is an inscription, just like the gates to Inferno, which had a quote which said something like, abandon all hope, ye who enter here. Telling people that as you head into the Inferno, it's hopeless in there. It's a place of misery. It's a place for lost people. On the gate of Purgatory, it says almost the opposite. It says, essentially something along the lines of abandon all intention to backslide. So don't even think of looking back if you enter these gates. And it's a wonderful place to get to. Once you've reached this place where there's no turning back, there's no looking back really. What I've noticed in the lives of my clients and of myself as well is that you do reach a point where you can no longer live a naive life. You can no longer just put your head in the sand. You can no longer, just for example with porn, you can no longer engage with porn without realizing what it's doing to you. You can't go back to your old ways of just being in denial. You can no longer be in denial about how it's impacting you. That even if you relapse, even if you slip up, you will be aware that time. You will be kind of present for it and realizing, hey, this is not serving me. This is not how I want to live. And so this is what this step is about, is, getting to the place where you can no longer turn back. You no longer can see it the same way. So as he journeys through Purgatory, this journey is about shedding the different beliefs and behaviors that cause us harm and suffering, the ways that we might lose our true self and get out of integrity. So Martha Beck writes this in the book. She says, when we're split from our true selves, what we really want is wholeness, but we don't even know what that looks like. We think it will come from the dark wood of error rewards, like wealth and power, or an endless supply of sex, drugs, and rock and roll. The pursuit of these things, given the intensity of the pain that drives them, is so absorbing that we really are often selfish, greedy, and brutal. But real relief, the sort that brings us back to the person we are meant to be, comes only when we embrace our true natures. So I want to dissect this quote a little bit because there's, again, so much beauty in it. That what we want, again, is wholeness, that feeling of being at peace inside, the feeling of being able to walk out on the streets with our head held high because we know that we're living a good life, that feeling of integrity. And what happens often is that we get hooked on these dark wood of error rewards. We get enticed or seduced by things like wealth and power, validation, pleasure, money, sex, drugs, all these things that in our society we're conditioned to want to chase after. And the pursuit of these things, as she says, given the intensity of the pain that drives them, can be quite absorbing for most of us. All the ways that we think, if I just get this or that, it will make me happy, can be quite strong. We can be quite absorbed by the pursuit of these things. And it can lead us to things acting out with selfishness, with greed, with brutality. And then again, Martha Beck writes here, she says, real relief comes only when we embrace our true nature. So this is what we are exploring now in this chapter, in this final section. Eventually, Dante makes it up to the top of the mountain. He gets up to the Garden of Eden, to paradise. And in both books, the Divine Comedy and also in this book, The Way of Integrity, there are quite large sections devoted to this part of the journey, to exploring what is it like at the top of the mountain. And I'm not going to go too much in depth here. Part of this, I will leave that up to you in your own exploration of what does the top of the mountain look like for you. I'm not a particularly religious person, and spirituality even, I think, is something that is so unique to each one of us that it might be better for each of us to explore on our own what really resonates with us. But I'll just say one important thing about this is that it is important to spend some time thinking about and working on, reflecting on what your paradise is, what your ideal dream life looks like, what full integrity looks like for you. What are the values you want to live by? What does it mean or look like to be absolutely free, to be liberated, There's different terminology, different terms that we can use given what tradition we come from, if you come from a religious tradition or not, if you come from a more secular background. And there are different ways of exploring these topics of freedom or liberation or heaven or paradise, whatever it is. But it is very important for you to spend some time thinking about what is that ultimate goal? What does that look like for you? It's helpful to actually know where you want to go. So I hope that you do take the time to think about what your full integrity looks like, what full liberation looks like for you. Now, as a recap here, Martha Beck offers a short list of ways that you can get back into integrity. If you find yourself feeling a little bit out of integrity or dealing with some challenging situations, she says, here's a list of 10 basic integrity skills. In many ways, these are foundational practices on the journey to integrity. So number 1 is to notice the dark wood of error symptoms. To just notice when these symptoms are present in your life as a signpost that you might be out of integrity. Things like irritation or fatigue or addiction, anger. Whenever you are noticing these symptoms, to just tune in and say, okay, what's going on here? Is there something out of integrity in my life right now? Number 2 is to connect with soul teachers. So this is that aspect of the path of connecting with teachers that offer alternative perspectives, teachers that shake your foundations, that challenge you, that take away your sedatives. It's such a good practice to continually connect with soul teachers. Again, it might be podcasts, it might be books, it might be YouTube channels, it might be going to spiritual centers, ways that you can connect with soul teachers. Number 3 is to tune into your inner wisdom, tune into your own personal truth. In our society, there are so many different voices out there telling you what's true or what you should believe. And part of the practice of integrity is listening to yourself, tuning into your own wisdom. Number 4 is to acknowledge your own errors and to admit when you've made a mistake. So this is such an important part, is to admit when you do something wrong, admit when you've made a mistake. That's going to be very helpful. And this relates to step number 5, or practice number 5, is to remain open to the idea that you might be wrong. In other words, to have humility, to practice this aspect of being open to new ideas and saying, oh, there might actually be things that I don't know here, and I might not be right about this. So that is step number 5. Step or practice number 6 is to avoid othering people or making enemies of people with different perspectives. So in many ways, we can create boundaries and create division and create drama by othering people. And so this practice is to be on the lookout for ways that you might be doing that. Practice number 7 is to refuse to betray yourself, to refuse to lie. The ways that you might betray your integrity by lying or cheating or scamming, to refuse to do that. Practice number 8, to spend time doing things that lift you up and nourish you. This is another great way to stay in integrity, is to make the time, to carve out time in your life for things that lift you up, whether it's sports or art or community, cooking. There's so many ways that you can spend time doing things that lift you up. Practice number 9 is to be authentic, to hide less and less of yourself. Practice being transparent and honest. Again, all these things are interrelated, right? Like not lying also relates to this. To speak your truth, to practice that authenticity. Practice number 10 is to forgive yourself for violating your integrity when you didn't know better. This, again, is another critical one, is that on this journey to integrity, there will be times that you slip up, that you slide, that you do things that you regret or have remorse about. And to practice forgiving yourself for violating that integrity is going to be very helpful along the way. So those are the 10 basic integrity skills, or the 10 foundational practices that will help you on this journey. Now, a couple reminders here on the path to integrity, a couple things that will be helpful. One is to recognize that as you walk the path, you will change. The more you walk this path of integrity, your thought patterns will change, your behaviors will change, And importantly, your beliefs about yourself will change. Over time, you will start to see yourself as more worthy and more lovable and more fundamentally whole, rather than feeling broken or feeling somehow lacking in some way. So that is one thing, is just to be on the lookout for the ways that you might be changing. The second is to understand that the path is what Martha Beck calls reiterative, in that it might take many rounds. You go back to the dark wood of error, you get re-hooked on these things that you thought would bring you happiness, and you have to go through the process again of waking up, going through the Inferno, climbing up through Purgatory, and again reaching that place of integrity. Sometimes it will feel like you're right back where you started, maybe on this path of porn addiction recovery. You've been clean and for a while, and then after a couple of years, you might relapse and you might find yourself back in a place where you feel like you have to start all over again. But what I want to say is that even when it feels like you've started all over, when it feels like you're back where you started, you're not. You are much stronger and more capable than ever before. It's now you have the skills to go through this process much more quickly. You know what it takes, you know what it's like to go through the Inferno, to go through Purgatory. So just to know that you are building skills as you go on this journey. Now, finally, I want to end with some extra motivation. And these are just 2 quotes that I picked out from the book that Martha Beck writes. She says, "Now I have something scary to tell you. You don't have much time left to live. Whether it's 5 years or 55, it's not all that long. You have no time to waste on suffering. No time to keep torturing your nature to serve your culture. The time for integrity is now." So this call to action, reminding you that you don't have much time left to live, whether it's 5 years or 55, it's not all that long. You really don't have that much time. So to not waste time on your suffering, the time for integrity is now. One more quote that I picked out from the book that I absolutely love. Martha Beck says, "Every day you make thousands of tiny decisions about what to do with your time. Every single choice is a chance to turn toward the life you really want. Repeatedly putting a little less time into what you don't love and a little more into what you do love is your next step on the way of integrity. Every day you make thousands of tiny decisions about what to do with your time. Every single choice is a chance to turn toward the life you really want." So I hope that these 2 final quotes or passages give you some extra motivation, give you that boost to get your life on track, to start walking the path of integrity. So that's it for today, folks. I hope you've enjoyed this mini series of integrity. I would love to hear what you think about it. So feel free to drop me a message. Let me know what you thought of this series. If you have any requests for books that I can dive into and explore on the podcast, I'd love to hear that as well. So that's it for today. Signing off from a beautiful day in Bangkok. I am headed to the climbing gym after this. So I will sign off and say goodbye. And with that, I'll catch you on the next episode.